Since the dawn of civilization, mankind has engaged in slavery, the ruling classes enslaving the masses. But this program isn't about bound and chained slavery. It's about psychological obedience and control, about how we've become willing pawns and modern-day slaves. You see, today's corporate elite believe that people are no different than cattle, that we have a herd instinct, or that we're like sheep who are only too willing to follow the leader.
What do you want?
At this point, you're probably saying, come on, people aren't really as bad as sheep, are they? No, people aren't as bad as sheep. They're worse. I mean, there's a limited number of things that you can get sheep to do. You can make people do anything. You see, we've been lured in by our owners and willingly addicted to a whole lot of things that are very bad for us and very good for them. And I'm not talking about hard drugs, alcohol, and tobacco, but a whole list of addictions that are just as dangerous and far more subtle. Things like television, the education system, fast food, pharmaceuticals and vaccines, the economy and the legal system, processed food, GMOs, and sugar, the topic of this show, and a substance that is the most dangerous drug of our time, that can be acquired by anyone of any age, anywhere. Sugar is every bit as addictive as cocaine. In fact, research shows that our brains are hardwired for pleasure, and sugar works in exactly the same way as addictive drugs like cocaine. The American Heart Association credits sugary foods with 180,000 deaths worldwide every year. And you add to these deaths an explosion in obese children and a virtual epidemic in diabetes, a worldwide epidemic affecting 246 million people that's expected to reach 380 million within the next 20 years. Leading countries include India, China, the US, Russia, Germany, and Japan, all caused by bad diet and no exercise. And what do the big corporations take on this? Denial, diversion, and disinformation. Corporate media makes a sensation out of homicide, which is responsible for 0.8% of all deaths, and says little or nothing about the 60+% of all deaths that are related to diet. And yet people still trust them. Big Tobacco knew the health risks of smoking more than 50 years ago, and yet for 50 years they spread doubt and disinformation, and everyone kept smoking. Because the verdict was still out, wasn't it? Didn't 9 out of 10 doctors smoke Luckies? Sure. Doctors of music, doctors of philosophy, doctors of anything but medicine. If you trust the corporations, then you're already in denial. Today's multinational corporations, with few exceptions, are just a new version of the robber barons of 19th century America, who used exploitive practices to amass great wealth. They exerted control over natural resources, influenced high levels of government, paid slave wages, squashed competition by buying out competitors, created monopolies and raised prices, and sold stock at inflated prices to unsuspecting investors. Any of that sound familiar? And that was in the 1800s. Today they're far more powerful and more devious. Here's what George Carlin says about them.
You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. By the way, it's the same big club they use to beat you over the head with all day long, when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care.
We're celebrating at Volunteered Slavery because the genius of George Carlin has exposed the big club. And just because we're not in the big club doesn't mean we have to play their nasty games. Food scientists from the Big Sugar division of the Big Club have learned how to manufacture food to make it more rewarding. Then they use marketing and corporate media to dangle it in front of us. And with the average American watching more than 5 hours of television a night, they have one hell of a captive audience. They hammer our children with messages telling them to crave sugar, wrapping kids' programming with brightly colored cartoon characters selling processed food with high sugar content and plenty of chemicals. And parents are either uninformed or lulled into complacency by the corporate machine. And the odds are really stacked against the uninformed and misinformed. Go to most any supermarket and you'll find 4, 5, 6 aisles of packaged processed food for every aisle of fresh produce. How did this happen? It happened because we let it happen. We actually trusted the corporate elite and forgot that they don't give a damn about us, our children, our health, or our environment. They only care about profit and control.
At this point, I just want to say that this program isn't about conspiracy theories or anarchy. It's about the forces that are manipulating our lives and to expose them and take back control. Our message isn't even a new one. Others have been pulling this curtain back for years. Back in 1961, President Eisenhower, in his farewell speech to the nation, warned us about the military-industrial complex. Since then, many others have given similar warnings. People like Howard Zinn, Noam Chomsky, Christopher Hedges, George Carlin, Matt Damon, Bill Hicks, and John Hagan, just to name a few. Hell, Bernie Sanders is running a campaign for President of the United States that promises to break up the big banks and take on Wall Street and the so-called special interests backed by the billionaire oligarchs, the big club that George Carlin talks about. For our part at Volunteered Slavery, we're just going to hammer away at the hidden influences that we should wake up to and see that we have the power to change. We're going to look at everything over time. We're just starting small with this show on sugar. Hey, that pool looks pretty inviting, doesn't it? Last one in gets a jelly donut.
Now we're back on the train. Back on the chain gang.
A quote from Wallace Stegner gives a very good reason for why many of us are still on the chain gang. He wrote, "There is a sense in which we are all each other's consequences." In other words, McDonald's exists because we all eat there. Walmart exists because we all shop there. Packaged, sugar-loaded, processed food outweighs healthy whole foods because that's what we've been told to buy or have been trained to crave from childhood. We have the power to change things, but the psychological bonds make these habits hard to overcome. McDonald's closed 900 stores last year because a whole bunch of us just had enough of their unhealthy food. If everyone stopped eating there, they'd close. Same thing with Walmart. They go to poor countries and pay poor people slave wages so that us volunteered slaves can buy a crappy t-shirt for $6. The Walton family have more wealth than the entire bottom 40% of America. One family. It's obscene. Many of their minimum wage earning employees need food stamps to survive. Walmart could easily pay $15 an hour and still make billions. If we refused to work there or shop there, they would change or go out of business. But that's a larger issue. And notice how everything ties back into the same corporate corruption. Anyway, back to sugar. High fructose corn syrup is the one to look out for. Studies confirm that cells use fructose for cell division, speeding up the growth and spread of cancer. Avoiding fructose intake may disrupt cancer growth. An estimated 580,000 Americans will die from cancer this year, and another 600,000 will die of heart disease. High fructose corn syrup. Even when used in moderation, it's a major cause of heart disease, obesity, cancer, dementia, liver failure, tooth decay, and more.
And just like the tobacco industry confused and misled us about the dangers of smoking, the corn industry is now spending millions on misinformation campaigns designed to convince consumers and healthcare professionals that their products are safe. Could it be because the food industry comprises 17% of our economy? You can bet on it. The Corn Refiners Association is using doubt and confusion to deceive us into believing that high fructose corn syrup isn't harmful. President Harry Truman said, if you can't convince them, confuse them. And they sow the seeds of doubt and complacency skillfully, using massive print and television advertising campaigns telling us how sweet it is. And do we ever buy into that? In America, we consume 30 billion pounds of sugar a year. That's 15 million tons. That's 15 million 2,000-pound bears. That's 15 Great Pyramids of Giza. That's 1,500,000 10-ton trucks, or 140 pounds per person per year. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors consumed about 20 teaspoons a year. And when you realize that one 20-ounce high-fructose corn syrup sweetened soda or sports drink or tea has 17 teaspoons of sugar in it, and that the average teenager often drinks 2 or more, you come to see that, like with GMOs, the big corporations are conducting a largely uncontrolled experiment on us, on the human species, without our knowledge or our consent. If you'd like to check out the science behind why high fructose corn syrup will kill you, visit Dr. Mark Hyman's website at drhyman.com. Right now, we'd like to go through what happens to your body when you drink 1 glass of soda.
After 10 minutes, the 10 teaspoons of sugar cause a devastating strike on the body. And if it wasn't for the phosphoric acid, you'd throw up. The fizz stops you from tossing.
After 20 minutes, a leap of insulin levels in the bloodstream happens as the liver turns all the sugar into fat.
After 40 minutes, all the caffeine is ingested. The pupils of your eyes expand, your blood pressure rises as your liver slams more sugar into your bloodstream. After 45 minutes, the body raises production of dopamine. That's the hormone that stimulates the brain's pleasure center, the same way heroin does.
After 1 hour, the phosphoric acid binds the calcium, zinc, and magnesium in your intestines, which supercharges your metabolism.
After more than an hour, the rush is over. The thrill is gone. All the calcium, magnesium, zinc, and sodium have been removed from the body, along with all the water by urination, and you find yourself either, get away from me, irritable, or subdued. Time for another hour of television and another glass of soda, or 2, or 3. And this isn't just a North American phenomenon. It's worldwide. It's just as bad or worse in Russia, India, China, Germany, Japan, all over the world. We have to wake up to the dangers of sugars in general, and particularly high fructose corn syrup. It's in everything. Not just in cookies and cakes and pies and candy bars, but it's in chips and ketchup and soup and canned goods and fruit punches and cocktails, and a host of processed food-like snacks, with the champion offender being soda. Read food labels. Educate yourselves. Break the addiction. If you must sweeten your coffee or tea or breakfast cereal, use unpasteurized honey, blue agave syrup, organic cane sugar. Some people are so enslaved by sugar that they drink 2 liters of soda a day. That's 68 fluid ounces a day. If you give someone with a sugar habit like this a health drink or an organic smoothie, more often than not, they throw up. Imagine being so addicted to super sweetened, chemically enhanced, processed garbage that real healthy organic food makes you sick. Talk about volunteered slavery.
Nobody's taking my soda away.